He stopped the recording. He listened to it once. It sounded pathetic, weak, desperate. Good. If Marth was right about the humans, that was exactly what they needed to hear. He sent the beacon. For 3 days, nothing happened. The HFY continued their advance. The shields around the remaining cities flickered and weakened. More Veluxi died every hour. Zelthrix watched from the observation window, waiting for a response that he increasingly believed would never come. Perhaps the humans had not received the message. Perhaps they had received it and ignored it. Perhaps Marth had been wrong about everything. On the morning of the 4th day, Councillor Veth burst into his quarters. Her wings were beating so fast they were a blur. Her colors were cycling rapidly, fear, excitement, confusion, all mixed together. Ambassador! A ship! A ship has arrived. Zelthrix was on his feet instantly. A human ship? Yes. It just appeared out of hyperspace. It is. It is heading toward the planet. They ran to the observation deck. Other crew members were already there, pressed against the windows, staring at the impossible sight before them. Zelthrix pushed through the crowd until he could see. It was just one ship. One ship against an armada of 10,000. The vessel was ugly by Veluxi standards. It was blocky and angular, covered in what looked like scars and patches from countless battles. It had no grace, no elegance. It looked like a weapon given form. On its side, in bold letters that the translator converted to Veluxi script, was a name, the Persistence. Zelthrix felt his heart sink. One ship. After all that, after risking everything by contacting the most feared species in the galaxy, the humans had sent one ship. It was an insult. Or perhaps they had simply not cared enough to send more. A communication signal beeped. Someone opened the channel. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran heavy cruiser Persistence," a voice said. It was a female human voice, translated into Veluxi through the station systems. "We received your distress signal. Took us a bit to get here. Human space is pretty far out. Is this Ambassador Zelthrix?" Zelthrix stepped forward to the communication console. "Yes, I am Zelthrix. Captain, I am grateful you have come, but I must ask, is this all? Is one ship all you could send?" There was a pause. Then a sound came through the speakers that made everyone in the room freeze. It was a strange, rhythmic noise. The translator labeled it laughter. "One ship is all you need, Ambassador," Captain Vasquez said. "Trust me on that. Now, we're going to need tactical data. Enemy positions, numbers, capabilities. Everything you've got. Send it to us and we'll get started." "Get started?" Zelthrix repeated. "Captain, there are millions of HFY drones on the surface. Tens of millions. Your ship cannot possibly, Ambassador." The captain's voice was calm, almost gentle. "We know what we're doing. Just send the data and stay out of our way. We'll handle the rest." The channel closed before Zelthrix could respond. He stood there, staring at the console, trying to process what had just happened. Around him, the other Veluxi were murmuring in confusion and fear. They had called for help. They had begged for salvation. And the galaxy's most terrifying species had sent a single battered ship with a captain who laughed at the sight of an army that had destroyed everything the Confederacy could throw at it. Councillor Veth appeared at his side. "Ambassador? What should we do?" Zelthrix watched the human ship descend toward the burning planet below. It was alone against an impossible enemy. It should have been suicide. But something about the captain's voice, something about that strange, confident laughter, made him wonder. "Send them everything?" he said quietly. "Every piece of tactical data we have. And then we watch." "Watch what?" Zelthrix turned to look at her. His eyes, for the first time in weeks, held a color that was not despair. It was something else. Something that looked almost like hope, but felt more like fear. "We watch what happens," he said, "when monsters meet monsters." The Persistence continued its descent. Behind it, the HFY armada began to move, thousands of ships turning to face this tiny, impossible threat. Below, on the surface, millions of drones looked up at the sky as the human vessel dropped through the clouds. None of them knew what was coming. None of them could have imagined. The monsters the galaxy had feared for 1,000 years had finally answered the call. And now, at last, the universe would remember why they had been feared in the first place. On the observation deck of Station 7, Ambassador Zelthrix pressed his hand against the cold glass and whispered a prayer to gods he did not believe in. He prayed that Marth had been right. He prayed that the humans would save them. And, deep in the darkest part of his mind, he prayed that if he had just made the worst mistake in his species' history, the end would at least be quick. Far below, through the smoke and fire and death, the cargo bay of the Persistence slowly began to open. Ambassador Zelthrix stood before the observation window of Orbital Station 7. His 4 arms hung limp at his sides. His compound eyes, usually bright with the colors of thought and emotion, had gone dark. Below him, his homeworld burned. Velther Prime had been beautiful once. The Veluxi people had built their civilization over 10,000 years. They had created cities of crystal that sang when the wind touched them. They had grown forests that stretched across entire continents. They had made peace with the 7 other insectoid species in their region of space and formed the Confederacy. They had believed, foolishly, that intelligence and cooperation would protect them from the darkness between the stars. They had been wrong. The HFY swarm had come 3 weeks ago. Their ships had filled the sky like a plague of locusts. Millions of them. Tens of millions. The Veluxi fleet had fought bravely. They had destroyed thousands of enemy vessels. But for every ship they killed, 10 more took its place. The HFY did not negotiate. They did not accept surrender. They existed for one purpose only: to consume, to grow, to spread. Zelthrix watched another city die. The crystal towers of Malvora, where he had been born, where his mates still waited, collapsed into dust and fire. The HFY ground forces moved through the ruins like a living carpet of death. Each drone was the size of a Veluxi adult, but covered in black armor that grew from their own bodies. Their claws could cut through steel. Their acid spit could melt stone. And they numbered in the billions. Ambassador. A voice came from behind him. It was Counselor Veth, his assistant. Her wings trembled with fear. "The council has gathered. They request your presence." Zelthrix did not turn from the window. "What is there to discuss? Our fleet is destroyed. Our armies are broken. The shields around the last 3 cities will fall within days. We have nothing left. Elder Morith says he has a suggestion." Zelthrix finally looked at her. Elder Morith was the oldest member of the council. He had lived for over 400 years. He had seen the Confederacy through many crises. If he had an idea, any idea, it was worth hearing. "Very well," Zelthrix said. "I will come." The council chamber was located at the heart of the station. It was a circular room with seats arranged in rings around a central platform. Normally, representatives from all 8 Confederacy species would be present. Now, many of those seats were empty. The Thrall delegation had died when their transport was destroyed. The Vorn representative had chosen to return to the surface to die with his people. Only 12 council members remained, and their colors were all the same: the deep blue of despair. Elder Morith stood at the center platform. He was ancient, his carapace cracked and faded with age, but his eyes still held the sharp light of intelligence. He waited until Zelthrix took his seat, then began to speak. "My friends," Morith said, "I will not waste time with pleasantries. We all know our situation. The HFY cannot be stopped by our remaining forces. Our allies in distant systems cannot reach us in time. We've sent distress signals to every friendly species within range. None have responded. They are afraid. They know that if they come to help us, the swarm will simply consume them as well. Then why have you called us here?" asked Delegate Yorn of the Sketh. "To watch us die together?" "No," Morith said. "I have called you here because there is one option we have not considered. One species we have not contacted." The chamber went silent. Zelthrix felt a cold sensation spread through his body. He knew somehow what Morith was about to say, and the thought filled him with a different kind of fear. "You cannot mean—" Delegate Yorn began. "The Terrans," Morith said. "The humans." The reaction was immediate. Several delegates rose from their seats in protest. Others made sounds of disgust or terror. One delegate, an elderly Morth, actually fainted. Zelthrix remained still, watching Morth's face. The old one was serious. Completely serious. "Have you lost your mind?" Delegate Yorn demanded. "The humans are monsters. They are the reason the quarantine exists. No species has made contact with them in over 1,000 years, and for good reason." "I am aware of the history," Morith said calmly. "Are you? Do you remember the Vexenar incident? The humans destroyed an entire fleet because one of their ships was damaged. Not attacked, damaged. By accident. They hunted down every Vexenar vessel for 3 years until the species surrendered unconditionally. I remember. And the colony war? When the Rix tried to settle on a world the humans claimed, they killed every Rix on the planet. Every single one. Then they sent the recording to the Rix homeworld with a message. Next time, ask first. That was their idea of diplomacy. Morith let the delegate finish his rant. When silence returned, he spoke again. "Everything you say is true. The humans are violent. They are aggressive. They are, by every standard we understand, insane. They come from a world where 90% of all life is designed to kill other life. They domesticated predators. They modified their own bodies to become more effective at warfare. They developed weapons that can crack planets, and they have used them. Then why?" Delegate Yorn started. "Because," Morith interrupted, "the HFY are worse." That silenced everyone. Zelthrix leaned forward in his seat, listening intently. "The swarm has consumed 37 species in the last 2 centuries, Morith continued. 37. Not conquered, consumed. They do not take slaves. They do not accept tribute. They eat everything and everyone, then move on to the next world. In 300 years, they will reach the core systems. In 500, they will control this entire arm of the galaxy. Unless someone stops them. And you think the humans can do that?" Another delegate asked. "They are only one species. The swarm has trillions of drones. The humans have never lost a war," Morith said simply. "Not once in their entire recorded history. They have fought each other. They have fought aliens. They have fought plagues and famines and natural disasters. They have never, ever lost. They do not know how to surrender. They do not understand the concept of acceptable losses. They will fight until they win or until every last one of them is dead. There is no middle ground." Zelthrix finally spoke. "Even if we contact them, why would they help us? We have avoided them for 1,000 years. We have treated them as pariahs. They owe us nothing." Morith's old eyes met his. "That is true. They owe us nothing. But I have studied human history, Ambassador. I have read their stories, learned their languages, tried to understand their minds. and I have discovered something strange about them. Something that does not fit with their reputation as monsters." "What?" Zelthrix asked. "They help those who ask. It is buried deep in their nature, beneath all the violence and aggression. When someone weaker asks for help, truly asks, the humans find it almost impossible to refuse. They call it many things: honor, duty, compassion. I do not fully understand it, but I believe that if we genuinely ask for their help, they will come. And if you are wrong?" Delegate Yorn demanded. "If they come and decide to conquer us instead, or if they simply ignore us." Morath spread his forearms in a gesture of acceptance. "Then we will be no worse off than we are now. We will die either way. At least this way, we have a chance." The chamber fell into silence again. Zelthrix looked around at the other delegates. He saw fear in their eyes. Fear of the Kethvori. Fear of the humans. Fear of death. But beneath the fear, he also saw something else. A tiny spark of hope. "I will send the message," Zelthrix said finally. "As ambassador, it is my responsibility. If this brings destruction upon us, the blame will be mine alone." He stood and walked toward the door. Behind him, he heard Delegate Yorn call out, "You are dooming us all, Ambassador. The humans are worse than the swarm. At least the Kethvori will kill us quickly." Zelthrix paused at the door. He turned back, and for the first time in days, there was a hint of color in his eyes. Quickly, "Delegate, I have watched my homeworld burn for 3 weeks. I have seen my people devoured alive. I have heard their screams in my sleep. There is nothing quick about what the swarm is doing to us." He paused. "And if the humans are truly worse than this, then perhaps that is exactly what we need." He left the chamber without another word. The communications room was located 3 levels down. Zelthrix went there alone, refusing Counselor Veth's offer to accompany him. This was something he needed to do himself. If he was about to invite monsters into their home, he wanted to look those monsters in the eye. The distress beacon was a simple device. It broadcast on all known frequencies in all known languages. It was designed to reach across vast distances of space and be understood by any intelligence that received it. Zelthrix programmed the coordinates. For human space, a region of the galaxy, the most. Maps simply labeled Quarantine Zone and began recording his message. "This is Ambassador Zelthrix of the Veluxi Confederacy," he said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his limbs. "We are under attack by the Kethvari swarm. Our defenses have fallen. Our people are dying. We have no one else to turn to. We beg for your help. Please, if there is any kindness in your species, any honor, any compassion, please help us. We will accept any terms. We will pay any price. Just please." Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Persistence and watched the planet burn. Her crew moved around her with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their task. They had done this before, many times, too many times, but it never got easier. "Captain," Lieutenant Chun said from the tactical station, "we're receiving the tactical data from the station. Put it on screen." The main display flickered to life, showing a map of the planet below. Red dots covered almost every surface. Each dot represented a cluster of Kethvari drones. There were thousands of clusters, millions of individual enemies. The 3 remaining Veluxi cities were shown in blue, tiny islands of resistance in an ocean of red. "Analysis?" Vasquez asked. Chun's fingers moved across his console. "The swarm has approximately 32 million active drones on the surface. Another 50 million in reserve on their landing ships. Their ground forces are concentrated around the 3 protected cities. The shields on those cities will fail within 48 hours at the current rate of assault. What about the orbital forces? 10,000 ships, give or take. Mostly troop transports and support vessels. About 200 actual warships. They're starting to move toward us now. Vasquez nodded. She had expected as much. The HFY were not stupid. They would recognize a threat when they saw one. Or at least, they would think they recognized one. They would see a single human ship and assume it was either a scout or a suicide mission. They would not understand what humans were capable of until it was too late. Orders, Captain? Commander Jackson asked. He was her second in command, a tall man with gray hair and scars across his face from a dozen battles. Take us down, Vasquez said. Landing Zone Alpha, as planned. And tell the troops to gear up. We drop in 30 minutes. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Landing Zone Alpha was in the middle of the heaviest fighting. It was the most dangerous possible location. It was also where they could do the most good. Aye, Captain, Jackson said. He began issuing orders to the helm. Vasquez turned and walked toward the elevator. She had preparations of her own to make. Behind her, she heard Lieutenant Chun mutter something under his breath. She caught the words, 300 against 30 million, and smiled. Poor Chun. He had only been with them for 6 months. He had not yet learned what human soldiers could do when they stopped holding back. The armory was located on Deck 4. It was a large room filled with weapons, armor, and equipment. When Vasquez arrived, it was already crowded with soldiers preparing for battle. They moved with practiced ease, checking weapons, running diagnostics on their powered exoskeletons, loading ammunition. Sergeant Major Williams spotted her first. He was a massive man, nearly 2 meters tall and built like a combat vehicle. His arms were covered in tattoos that told the story of his military career. Every battle, every campaign, every friend he had lost. There were a lot of tattoos. Captain on deck. He bellowed. The soldiers snapped to attention. Vasquez waved them back to their work. As you were. We don't have time for ceremony. She walked through the room, inspecting the troops. These were her people. Her family. She had served with most of them for years. She had watched them bleed, watched them die, watched them come back from injuries that would have killed any other species. They were not ordinary soldiers. They were the worst nightmares of a galaxy that had learned to fear humanity. Status, Sergeant Major? Williams fell into step beside her. All troops are combat ready, Captain. Full loadout. The new kids are nervous, but they'll hold. The veterans are... He paused, searching for the right word. Eager. Vasquez nodded. She understood. There was something in the human soul that responded to impossible odds. Something dark and ancient that woke up when death was near. The veterans had learned to embrace it. The new recruits would learn today. What about the dogs? Ready and angry, ma'am. They can smell the swarm through the hull. They want blood. The dogs were not really dogs anymore. Centuries of genetic engineering had transformed them into something far more dangerous. They were larger, stronger, smarter. Their teeth could bite through armor. Their claws could tear metal. But beneath all the modifications, they were still dogs at heart, loyal, brave, eager to protect their pack. Vasquez reached the end of the armory, where a small private section had been set up for the command staff. Her own equipment was waiting there. A powered exoskeleton painted black. A plasma rifle that could fire miniature suns. A combat knife made from materials that did not exist in nature. And her lucky coin, which she had carried into every battle since she joined the military. She began to suit up. As she worked, her mind drifted to the message they had received. The Veluxi ambassador's voice had been filled with desperation. He had begged for help. He had promised anything in return. It was exactly the kind of plea that humanity could never ignore. The galaxy did not understand humans. They saw the violence, the aggression, the refusal to submit. They saw monsters. And they were right, humans were monsters. But they were a specific kind of monster. They were the kind that protected the weak. The kind that stood between the darkness and those who could not protect themselves. The kind that, when asked for help, would cross a galaxy and face an army without hesitation. Vasquez had read the reports on the HFY. She knew what they had done to other species. She knew about the worlds they had consumed, the civilizations they had destroyed. She knew they were monsters too, but a different kind. The kind that preyed on the helpless. The kind that existed only to take and destroy. Today, those two kinds of monsters would meet. And only one would survive. Captain. Commander Jackson's voice came over the intercom. We're approaching the landing zone. The HFY are massing to meet us. Looks like they're taking us seriously. Good, Vasquez said. Let them come. Tell the troops to prepare for deployment. And the orbital fleet? Vasquez smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Ignore them. They'll learn soon enough that they should have stayed away. The Persistence shook as it entered the atmosphere. Through the viewports, Vasquez could see fire streaming past the hull. The ship's shields deflected the worst of it, but the ride was rough. Enemy fire added to the turbulence. HFY ground forces were shooting at them with everything they had. She made her way to the main cargo bay, where 300 soldiers stood in perfect formation. They wore their exoskeletons like second skins. Their weapons were charged and ready. Their faces, visible through their helmet visors, showed no fear. Only focus. Only determination. At the front of the formation, the war dogs waited in their combat harnesses. There were 50 of them, each one the size of a small horse. Their eyes glowed with the light of their neural implants. Their teeth gleamed in the artificial light. When they saw Vasquez approach, the lead dog, a massive beast named Cerberus, let out a low growl of greeting. Vasquez scratched behind his ears. Even after all the modifications, the dog still loved that. Listen up, she called out, her voice amplified by her helmet speakers. You all know the mission. We drop into the hot zone. We establish a perimeter. We push the swarm back from the city. Simple. A few soldiers laughed. There was nothing simple about what they were about to do. The Veluxi think we're crazy, Vasquez continued. They think we're committing suicide. They've never seen humans fight before. Today, we show them what we're capable of. Today, we remind the galaxy why they fear us. She paused, looking at each soldier in turn. These were her people, her responsibility. Some of them would die today. She knew that. They knew that. And they were here anyway. The second wave hit at dawn. Ambassador Zelthrix watched from Orbital Station 7, his compound eyes fixed on the tactical display. The HFY had gathered their forces during the night. 2 million drones, organized into assault formations, supported by heavy armor and aerial units. It was the largest single attack they had launched since the invasion began. It was designed to crush the human position completely. They are going to die, Counselor Veth said softly beside him. There are too many. No one can survive that. Zelthrix did not respond. He had thought the same thing yesterday. He had been wrong. On the surface, Captain Vasquez saw the wave coming. The HFY moved like a living tsunami, a wall of black chitin and claws stretching from horizon to horizon. Their war cries filled the air, a high-pitched screaming that was designed to paralyze prey with fear. Most species would have broken and run at the sight. Most species would have begged for mercy. Vasquez smiled. All units, this is the captain. Here they come. Make them regret it. The humans opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked across the battlefield, cutting through the advancing drones like fire through paper. Each shot killed 3 or 4 enemies. The automated defense turrets added their own fury, sweeping back and forth, turning the ground into a killing field. The first line of drones simply evaporated, but the swarm did not stop. It could not stop. The hive mind that controlled and had no concept of retreat or self-preservation. It only knew how to advance, how to consume, how to overwhelm through sheer numbers. More drones rushed forward to replace the fallen. Then more still. The distance closed. 500 meters. 300. 100. Melee range. Sergeant Williams bellowed. Give them hell. The humans charged. It was madness. Pure, beautiful madness. 300 soldiers running toward 2 million enemies, screaming war cries that had been old when humanity first reached the stars. They hit the HFY line like a hammer hitting glass. Private First Class Maria Santos was 22 years old. She had joined the military to pay for her education. She had never expected to end up here on an alien world, fighting monsters from nightmare. But here she was, and she discovered something about herself that day. She discovered that she was very, very good at killing things. Her plasma rifle hummed in her hands, each shot perfectly placed. When the rifle overheated, she drew her combat knife and kept going. A drone lunged at her face. She ducked under its claws, drove her blade into its throat, twisted, and pulled it free in time to parry another attack. Her exoskeleton strength multipliers let her move faster than any unaugmented human. But it was more than technology that kept her alive. It was instinct. Millions of years of evolution had designed humans for exactly this moment, for the close quarters fight, for the desperate struggle against predators. That ancient programming awoke inside her, and Maria Santos became something primal, something deadly. A drone slashed her arm, cutting through the armor and into her flesh. The pain was intense. The blood was hot against her skin. She ignored it. Pain was just information. Pain could wait until the battle was over. She grabbed the drone that had wounded her and slammed its head into the ground so hard. Its skull shattered across the battlefield. Similar scenes played out. Humans fought like demons, taking wounds that should have killed them and fighting on. Sergeant Williams lost his left arm to an acid spray. He cauterized the wound with his own plasma pistol, picked up his weapon with his right hand, and kept shooting. Lieutenant Chun took a blade through his stomach. He stuffed the wound with medical foam, injected himself with combat stimulants, and killed 40 more drones before finally collapsing. And then there were the dogs. Cerberus led his pack into the heart of the enemy. Formation. The war dogs were creatures of nightmare, massive, unstoppable, designed for exactly this kind of fight. They tore through drones like wolves through sheep. Their armored hides deflected most attacks. Their enhanced muscles let them move with terrifying speed. Their jaws could bite through anything, but more than that, they fought smart. They worked together, just as their ancestors had worked together for millions of years. One dog would draw an enemy's attention while another attacked from behind. They guarded each other's flanks. They communicated with barks and howls and subtle movements that the HFY could not understand or predict. Cerberus found himself surrounded by 20 drones. They closed in from all sides, their claws raised for the kill. He did not panic. He did not retreat. He lowered his massive head and charged. The first drone died before it could react. Cerberus's jaws closed around its neck and snapped it like a twig. He used the body as a weapon, swinging it into the others, creating space. Then he was among them, biting and clawing, a tornado of teeth and death. In 30 seconds, all 20 drones were dead. Captain Vasquez fought her way to the center of the enemy formation. She had a goal to command units. Every HFY army had special drones that relayed orders from the hive mind. Kill them, and the regular drones would become confused, disorganized. It would not stop them completely, but it would slow them down. She found the first command unit hiding behind a wall of regular drones. It was larger than the others, with strange growths on its head that served as communications arrays. It saw her coming and screamed orders to its guards. The guards died. Vasquez killed them in seconds, her movements too fast for them to follow. Then she was face to face with the command unit. It tried to run. She caught it by its communication arrays and tore them off. The unit screamed, a sound that echoed across the battlefield as thousands of drones suddenly lost their coordination. But Vasquez was not done. She pulled the command unit close, looked into its compound eyes, and said, "Tell your queen something from me. Tell her that humans are coming, and tell her to be afraid." Then she killed it. The effect was immediate. The drones around her began to stumble, their movements jerky and uncertain. The assault faltered. For the first time since the wave began, the HFY advance stopped. Zelthric saw it happen on the tactical display. What did she do? "She killed a command unit," Counselor Veth said, her voice filled with awe. "She fought through 1,000,000 drones to kill a single target. That should not be possible. That is not possible. And yet we are watching it happen." The humans pressed their advantage. With the enemy disorganized, they pushed forward, expanding their perimeter. More command units fell. The HFY formation began to collapse into chaos, but the swarm was not beaten yet. Deep in the hive ship orbiting the planet, the queen felt her children dying. She felt the confusion spreading through her army, and she felt something she had not felt in centuries: uncertainty. These creatures, these humans, they were wrong. They fought in ways that made no sense. They took damage that should have killed them and kept fighting. They attacked instead of defended. They seemed to have no survival instinct at all. The queen had consumed 37 species. She had fought countless battles. She had never encountered anything like this. She reached out with her mind and took direct control of her army. "Humanity has been alone for 1,000 years, she said, her voice quieter now. "The galaxy quarantined us. They were afraid of what we might become. Maybe they were right to be afraid. But today, someone asked for our help. Someone who was dying, who had no one else to turn to, asked us to save them. And that is exactly what we are going to do." She drew her plasma rifle and held it high. "We are the monsters they fear. We are the nightmare that guards the innocent. We are human, and we do not lose." The soldiers roared in response. It was a primal sound, something that came from deep within the human soul. The sound of predators about to be unleashed. The sound of warriors ready to die. The cargo bay doors began to open. Hot wind rushed in, carrying the smell of smoke and death. Below them, Vasquez could see the battlefield, a nightmare landscape of fire and destruction. HFY drones swarmed across the ground like a living carpet. In the distance, the energy shield around the city flickered weakly. "Drop in 10 seconds," Commander Jackson announced over the intercom. Vasquez activated her exoskeleton's jump jets. Around her, 300 soldiers did the same. The war dogs tensed, ready to leap. 5 seconds. She took a deep breath, said a quick prayer, thought of everyone she had ever lost. "Go, go, go!" She jumped. The fall was exhilarating. Wind screamed past her as she plummeted toward the ground. Her exoskeleton systems tracked her descent, calculating the perfect moment to fire the retrojets. Around her, her soldiers fell in formation, a rain of death dropping from the sky. The HFY saw them coming. Thousands of drones looked up, their compound eyes tracking the falling humans. They began to fire acidic projectiles, and plasma bolts filled the air. Vasquez weaved through the barrage, her reflexes enhanced by her armor's neural interface. Beside her, soldiers executed the same maneuvers. A few were hit. They kept falling anyway. 20 meters from the ground, Vasquez fired her retrojets. The sudden deceleration almost broke her legs, even through the exoskeleton's shock absorbers. She hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up shooting. Her first shot vaporized a HFY drone. Her second shot killed 2 more. Then she was in the middle of them, moving and shooting, a blur of violence that left bodies in her wake. Around her, her soldiers landed and joined the fight. The HFY were terrifying opponents. They were fast, strong, and utterly without fear. Their claws could cut through most armor. Their acid could melt flesh and metal alike. They fought with the mindless efficiency of a hive mind, each drone perfectly coordinated with its neighbors. It did not matter. The humans were faster, stronger, and unlike the drones, they did not fight as individuals. They fought as a pack. Each soldier covered their neighbors. Each movement flowed into the next. They had trained for this their entire lives. They had been born for this. Sergeant Williams waded into a group of drones, his heavy weapons blazing. Each shot from his cannon tore through 3 or 4 enemies at once. When he ran out of ammunition, he grabbed a drone by the throat and tore it in half with his bare hands. His exoskeleton's hydraulics screamed with the effort, but he did not stop. The war dogs were even more terrifying. Cerberus led the pack in a devastating charge, his massive jaws closing around drone after drone. He moved like liquid death, each bite a kill, each movement perfectly efficient. The other dogs followed his lead, turning a section of the battlefield into a slaughterhouse. Vasquez fought her way toward the city shield. That was the objective: reach the generators, reinforce them, give the defenders time to regroup. The swarm was trying to stop her. Thousands of drones converged on her position, an endless wave of black armor and claws. She killed them all. Her plasma rifle ran dry. She drew her knife and kept fighting. A drone got past her guard and slashed at her chest. The claws scraped across her armor but did not penetrate. She grabbed the drone's arm, broke it, then drove her knife through its skull. More came, more died. Time lost all meaning. There was only the fight, only the endless rhythm of death. Kill, move, kill again. Her muscles burned with exhaustion. Her armor's damage indicators were flashing red. But she did not stop. Could not stop. Humans did not know how to stop. And then, suddenly, there were no more enemies in front of her. Vasquez looked around. She was standing at the base of the city shield generator. Behind her, a path of destruction marked her progress. Hundreds of dead drones, their bodies piled in heaps. Her soldiers were still fighting nearby, but the pressure had lessened. The swarm was pulling back. "Captain," Lieutenant Chun's voice came over the comm. "The HFY are retreating from this sector. They're actually retreating." Vasquez allowed herself a moment to catch her breath. Her lungs were burning. Her hands were shaking. But she was alive. And the mission was succeeding. "Don't celebrate yet," she said. "This is just the beginning. They'll be back with more forces." "Ma'am, I've been monitoring their communications. They seem confused. They've never seen anything fight like this before. Their commanders don't know what to do." Vasquez looked out at the burning landscape. In the distance, she could see the massive bulk of the swarm's army, millions of drones waiting for orders. They had expected an easy victory. They had not expected this. "Tell the troops to dig in," she said. "Set up defensive positions around the generator. And get me a count of our casualties." "Aye, Captain." The count came back a few minutes later. 12 dead, 40 wounded, most of whom refused medical evacuation. Out of 300 soldiers who had dropped into an army of millions, only 12 had fallen. It was a miracle. It was also completely normal for human forces. Vasquez climbed to the top of a ruined building and looked out at the battlefield. Her soldiers were establishing a perimeter, setting up automated defenses, preparing for the next assault. The war dogs were patrolling the area, their enhanced senses alert for any threat. Above, the Persistence was engaging the HFY orbital fleet. Even from the ground, she could see the flashes of weapons fire. The aliens had expected an easy kill-one ship against 10,000. They were learning the hard way that human ships were not like other ships. The Persistence had been designed for exactly this kind of fight. Outnumbered and outgunned was where it performed best. Her comm crackled. "Captain, this is Station 7. We've been monitoring the battle. We don't understand what we're seeing." "How is this possible?" Vasquez recognized the voice. "The ambassador. Zelfrix." "Ambassador," she said. "I told you we would handle it. You're killing them. Thousands of them. With only 300 soldiers. This should not be possible. And yet here we are." There was a long pause. When the ambassador spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" Vasquez thought about the question. She thought about human history, the wars, the struggles, the endless fight for survival. She thought about the death world they had evolved on, where everything tried to kill them and they had killed it right back. She thought about the 1,000 years of isolation, the fear of other species, the reputation they had built. "We're human, Ambassador," she said finally. "We're the monsters everyone warned you about. But right now, we're your monsters. And we are going to save your people, no matter how many of the swarm we have to kill to do it." Another pause. Then slowly, "Thank you." Vasquez almost smiled. It was strange, hearing gratitude instead of fear. She had almost forgotten what it felt like. "Don't thank us yet," she said. "The real fight hasn't even started." She closed the channel and looked out at the enemy army. They were massing for another attack. Millions of drones, gathering for a wave that would crash against her 300 soldiers like an ocean against a rock. She checked her weapon, loaded a fresh power cell, rolled her shoulders to loosen her muscles. "Come on then," she whispered to the swarm. "Let's see what you've got." In the distance, the HFY began their advance. The ground shook with their footsteps. The air filled with their screaming. And 300 humans prepared to meet them. On the surface, Vasquez felt the change immediately. The drones around her suddenly snapped back into coordination. Their movements became sharper, more precise. They stopped attacking individually and began working together with a new level of efficiency. "The Queen," she muttered. "She's controlling them directly now." This was both good and bad. Good, because it meant they had hurt the swarm badly enough to force her intervention. Bad because a Queen-controlled army was far more dangerous than a normal one. "All units fall back to defensive positions," Vasquez ordered. "They're about to get a lot smarter." The humans retreated in good order, fighting every step of the way. They reached their fortified line just as the swarm launched its renewed assault. But this time, the attack was different. Instead of a mindless wave, the drones moved in coordinated patterns. They targeted the automated turrets first, destroying them with focused fire. They flanked the human positions, trying to surround them. And they brought up their heavy units. HFY heavy units were massive creatures, the size of buildings, armored with chitin plates thick enough to stop plasma bolts. They had been held in reserve until now. The Queen was done playing games. The first heavy unit crashed into the human line. It scattered soldiers like toys, its massive claws crushing anything in its path. Private Santos found herself directly in front of it. She looked up at the monster 10 meters tall, weighing tons, absolutely unstoppable. She attacked anyway. Her plasma rifle barely scratched its armor. Her knife was useless. She threw a grenade, it bounced off and exploded harmlessly. The heavy unit raised a claw to crush her. A blur of motion. Cerberus slammed into the heavy unit's leg, his jaws closing around the joint. The armor was too thick to penetrate, but the force of the impact staggered the creature. Its claw missed Santos by centimeters. More dogs joined the attack. They could not kill the heavy unit, but they could distract it, worry at its legs, force it to defend itself. It was exactly what humans and dogs had been doing together for 50,000 years, hunting prey too large for either to kill alone. Santos saw her chance. While the heavy unit was distracted, she sprinted toward its back. There, where the armor plates met, was a small gap, a weakness in the design. She jumped, her exoskeleton boosting her high into the air, and drove her combat knife into the gap. The blade sank deep. The heavy unit screamed. Santos pulled herself up, using the knife as an anchor. She reached the gap, pulled out a plasma grenade, shoved it inside, and threw herself off. The explosion tore the heavy unit apart from the inside. Santos hit the ground hard. Her armor protected her from the worst of it, but she felt ribs crack. She lay there for a moment, gasping. Cerberus appeared above her, his huge tongue licking her faceplate. "Good boy," she wheezed. "Very good boy." She got up and kept fighting. The battle raged for hours. More heavy units came. More died. The humans adapted to each new threat, developing tactics on the fly. They used the dogs as mobile strike teams, targeting weak points. They created kill zones where the remaining turrets could focus fire. They fought with everything they had, but they were taking losses. 30 dead now, then 40, then 50. The survivors were exhausted, running on stimulants and willpower. Their ammunition was low. Their armor was failing. For the first time since the battle began, Vasquez felt doubt creeping into her mind. Then she heard the sound. It started as a low rumble, barely audible over the noise of combat, but it grew louder and louder until it drowned out everything else, a roaring, screaming thunder that came from the sky. Vasquez looked up. Through the clouds of smoke and fire, she saw ships. Human ships. Dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and leading them all. The massive shape of a battleship, the TRS Fury of Earth. "This is Admiral Chun of the Terran Relief Fleet," a voice announced over all frequencies. "Sorry we're late, Captain. Traffic was terrible." Vasquez laughed. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. "Admiral, you have no idea how glad I am to hear your voice. What's the situation?" 50 ships, Captain. 20,000 Marines ready for drop. We received your status updates and decided you might need some backup. I told the locals one ship would be enough. And you were right for the first day. But Earth Command decided we shouldn't let you have all the fun. The fleet began its attack. Weapons fire rained down from orbit, targeting the HFY heavy units and command positions. Dropships launched from the carriers, carrying thousands of fresh Marines. The sky filled with human firepower. On the ground, the surviving soldiers of the Persistence cheered. The dogs howled in triumph. Even the wounded, those who should have been unconscious from pain and blood loss, found the strength to raise their weapons and add their fire to the barrage. The swarm reeled. The Queen's direct control could not compensate for the overwhelming force now descending on her army. Her drones began to fall by the thousands, then the tens of thousands. For the first time in her ancient life, She considered the possibility that she might actually lose. Vasquez rallied her troops for a final push. They were exhausted, broken, dying. But they were human, and humans did not stop. One more charge, she shouted. Push them back. Show them what we're made of. They charged. 300 soldiers reduced to less than 200, leading 50,000 fresh Marines in an assault that would be studied in military academies for centuries. They hit the disorganized swarm like a tidal wave, crushing everything in their path. By nightfall, the HFY ground forces were broken. Millions of drones lay dead. The survivors were fleeing toward their landing ships, desperate to escape. The 3 Valugzi cities stood intact, their shields now protected by human gun emplacements. Ambassador Zelthrix watched it all from orbit. He had not moved from the observation window in 18 hours. He could not look away. He was watching the impossible become real. How? He whispered. How can anyone fight like that? Beside him, Counselor Veth was silent. She had no answer. No one in the galaxy had an answer. On the surface, Captain Vasquez stood atop a pile of dead drones and watched the enemy retreat. Her armor was scored with dozens of hits. Her knife was notched from cutting through chitin. She had killed more enemies today than she could count. But she took no joy in it. This was not sport. This was not entertainment. This was the terrible purpose for which humanity had been designed. They were monsters, yes, but they were monsters who protected the weak. Monsters who answered when called. Monsters who would die before they let innocent people suffer. She looked up at the sky, where the human fleet was hunting down the last of the HFY orbital forces. Then she looked at her surviving soldiers, battered, bloody, but unbroken. Good work today, she said quietly. But we're not done yet. Somewhere out there, the Queen is still alive. And as long as she lives, the swarm will return. Sergeant Williams limped up beside her. His arm was gone, replaced temporarily by a combat prosthetic. What's the plan, Captain? Vasquez looked toward the horizon, where the massive shapes of the HFY hive ships were barely visible through the smoke. We find the Queen, she said, and we end this. The monsters the galaxy feared had arrived. And now, at last, they would show the swarm what real monsters were capable of. The Queen felt fear. It was an alien sensation, something she had not experienced since her birth centuries ago. She was the mother of billions. She had consumed worlds. She had crushed armies and devoured civilizations. Nothing in the galaxy could threaten her. And yet, these creatures, these humans, they were coming for her. She sat at the center of her hive ship, surrounded by her most loyal guards. The ship was massive, 10 kilometers long, grown from organic materials over hundreds of years. It was her home, her fortress, her womb. Millions of drones lived within its walls, ready to defend her to the death. It would not be enough. She knew that now, through her connection to the hive mind, she had felt her children die. She had experienced every death, every moment of pain and terror as the humans tore through her forces. She had tried to stop them. She had taken direct control, coordinated her drones with perfect efficiency, deployed her heaviest weapons. None of it had mattered. The humans did not fight like any species she had encountered before. They did not seek survival. They did not fear death. They advanced into certain destruction with joy on their faces, singing songs and shouting challenges. They were broken, wrong, insane. They were winning. Reports flooded through the hive mind. The human fleet had destroyed her orbital forces. Landing craft were approaching her hive ship. The humans were not content with victory. They wanted her. They wanted to end the swarm forever. She considered fleeing. Her ship was fast enough to escape, to jump to hyperspace before the humans could stop her. She could retreat, rebuild, return in 100 years with a larger army. Patience was her greatest weapon, but something stopped her. Pride, perhaps, or simply the inability to accept that she, the great queen, could be driven away by such primitive creatures. She would stay. She would fight. And she would show these humans what happened to those who challenged the swarm. On the bridge of the Persistence, Captain Vasquez studied the hive ship through the tactical display. It was massive, larger than any vessel in the human fleet. Its surface was covered with weapon emplacements and launch bays. Getting inside would not be easy. The ship's outer hull is organic material reinforced with metallic compounds, Lieutenant Chun reported. Our weapons can penetrate it, but it'll take time. And they have a lot of point defense systems. What about landing directly? Vasquez asked. Possible, but dangerous. The hull is crawling with defense drones. Any landing party would be under immediate attack. Vasquez nodded. She had expected as much. This was not going to be a clean operation. People were going to die. But the alternative, letting the Queen escape, letting the swarm continue its rampage across the galaxy, was not acceptable. Admiral Chun, she said over the command channel, I need volunteers for a direct assault on the hive ship. We'll breach the hull, fight our way to the Queen, and kill her. Simple. There was a pause. Then Admiral Chun's voice came back, dry and amused. Captain, I have 20,000 Marines requesting assignment to your operation. You'll have to narrow it down. Vasquez smiled. That was humanity for you. Tell them they were about to walk into certain death, and they would fight each other for the privilege. I'll take the best 500. And I want the Persistence for the insertion. She's gotten me this far. The ship is yours, Captain. Good luck. And Elena, give that Queen a message from Earth. Tell her she picked the wrong galaxy. The assault began at midnight. The Persistence led the way, its weapons blazing as it carved a path through the Kethvori defenses. Behind it came a wave of fighters and bombers, targeting the point defense systems and creating openings. The human fleet maintained a constant barrage on the hive ship's hull, keeping the defenders occupied. Inside the Persistence, 500 soldiers prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. They were the best of the best veterans of a dozen campaigns, survivors of battles that had killed thousands. They knew what they were getting into. They went anyway. Captain Vasquez walked among them, checking equipment and offering encouragement. She had asked for volunteers. Every single one of them had stepped forward. Now she owed them the best leadership she could provide. Captain, Sergeant Major Williams approached her. He had a new prosthetic arm now, properly fitted, its metal surface gleaming under the artificial lights. The troops are ready, but I have a request. What is it? Let me take point. I've been fighting these things since the beginning. I know how they move, how they think. I can get us to the Queen. Vasquez studied him. Williams had already done more than anyone could ask. He had lost an arm and nearly his life in the initial assault. He had every right to rest, but she saw the look in his eyes. He was not asking for glory or recognition. He was asking for the chance to finish what he had started. Point is yours, Sergeant Major. Don't make me regret it. Williams grinned a fierce, predatory expression. Never, Captain. The Persistence hit the hive ship's hull at full speed. The impact was tremendous. The cruiser's reinforced prow punched through the organic material, penetrating deep into the ship's interior. Emergency bulkheads sealed around the breach, trapping the human vessel inside. Locked in place, Commander Jackson reported from the bridge. We're not going anywhere until we cut ourselves free. This is now a one-way trip. Understood, Vasquez said. Open the hatches. Let's get moving. The cargo doors opened onto a nightmare. The interior of the hive ship was a maze of organic tunnels, pulsing with a sick green light. The walls were covered in slime and strange growths. The air was thick with chemical signals that the humans' translators could not parse. And everywhere, were drones. They poured from every opening, rushing toward the human invaders. Their screams echoed through the tunnels, a sound designed to overwhelm and terrify. Williams led the charge. He hit the first drone at full speed, his prosthetic arm punching through its chest and out the other side. He threw the body into the next attacker, then opened fire with the weapon in his other hand. His soldiers followed, spreading out into a fighting formation that turned the tunnel into a slaughterhouse. The war dogs were unleashed. Cerberus and his pack had survived the previous battles, though many bore wounds from the fighting. They were eager for more. They raced ahead of the humans, their senses guiding them toward the Queen's location. The drones tried to stop them. The drones failed. Vasquez fought in the center of the formation, directing her forces while killing anything that came within reach. They had studied the hive ship's structure, identified the most likely path to the Queen's chamber. But the ship was constantly changing, growing new tunnels and sealing old ones. The route they had planned was already obsolete. Left. Cerberus barked, or at least, that was what his neural implant transmitted. The dogs could not speak, but they could communicate basic information through their enhancements. Smell Queen, this way. The story spread across subspace communications faster than light itself. Every species heard it. Every civilization discussed it. The humans had done the impossible. They had answered a cry for help from strangers, defeated an enemy that had crushed every force sent against it, and asked for nothing in return. The galaxy remembered why it had feared humanity. And for the first time, it began to understand that fear might not be the appropriate response. Captain Vasquez stood on the surface of Velther Prime, looking up at the sky where the human fleet was finishing its cleanup operations. She was exhausted. 4 days of combat with almost no sleep had pushed her to the limit. But she felt good. They had done something important here, something that mattered. Sergeant Major Williams appeared beside her. His new arm was damaged again, sparking slightly at the joints. He did not seem to notice. "Hell of a fight," he said. "Hell of a fight," she agreed. "What happens now?" Vasquez watched a formation of human fighters fly overhead, their engines leaving white trails across the blue sky. "Now we go home, rest, wait for the next call. You think there'll be another one? There's always another one. Somewhere, someone is suffering. Somewhere, someone needs help." She turned to look at him. "And when they call, we answer. That's who we are." Williams nodded slowly. He understood. Every human understood, even if they could not put it into words. They were the galaxy's monsters, yes. But they had chosen what kind of monsters to be. The kind that protected the weak. The kind that answered when called. The kind that made other monsters afraid. Behind them, the Veluxy city was coming back to life. Survivors emerged from shelters, looking up at the sky where their saviors patrolled. They did not understand what had happened. They probably never would. But they were alive. And that was enough. Ambassador Zelthric's S-shuttle touched down nearby. The old diplomat walked across the ruined landscape toward Captain Vasquez, his steps slow and uncertain. He stopped a few meters away, studying her with his compound eyes. "Captain," he said, I do not have words." "Then don't use any," Vasquez replied. "Words are overrated." Zelthrix made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You saved us. You came when no one else would. You fought and died for people you had never met. Yes, why?" Vasquez smiled. It was a human expression, strange, alien, slightly unsettling. But there was warmth in it too. Kindness. "Because you asked, she said, "because you needed help. That's always been enough for us." She turned and walked toward her shuttle. Williams fell into step beside her, and soon the other survivors of the Persistence joined them. 300 soldiers had dropped onto this world. Less than 200 were walking away. But they were walking away, and the people they had come to save were alive. That was victory. That was always victory. The galaxy would remember this day. The day the monsters answered the call. The day humanity showed its true face. Not the face of violence and aggression, but the face of protection and sacrifice. The monsters were still terrifying, still dangerous, still everything the stories warned about. But now the galaxy knew something else too. Now the galaxy knew that the monsters could be friends. And for those who preyed on the weak, who consumed the innocent, who thought themselves above consequence, for them, it was time to be very, very afraid. The humans followed the dogs through a series of tunnels that grew steadily larger. They were getting closer. The resistance was getting fiercer. Every meter was bought with blood and fire. Private Santos, now promoted to corporal, after her destruction of the heavy unit, found herself separated from the main group when a tunnel collapsed behind her. She was alone, surrounded by drones, her ammunition almost exhausted. She did not panic. Panic was useless. Instead, she analyzed the situation, identified her best option, and acted. She ran, not away from the enemy, but toward them. She sprinted down a side tunnel, the drones in pursuit. She had noticed something, a pattern in the hive ship structure. The tunnels near the Queen's chamber were larger, better maintained. If she could find one of those tunnels, she could rejoin her unit. She burst through a membrane wall and found herself in a massive cavern. And there, at the center, was the Queen. The Queen of the HFY was enormous, 100 times larger than her drones. Her body swollen with the organs necessary to produce millions of offspring. She was hideous by human standards, a nightmare of chitin and teeth and grasping limbs. But there was intelligence in her eyes. Old intelligence. Cunning intelligence. Santos froze. She was alone, injured, almost out of ammunition. She had found the Queen by accident, and she was going to die. The Queen studied her. Through the hive mind, she had been watching this particular human, the one who had destroyed her heavy unit, the one who kept fighting no matter how badly she was hurt, the one who seemed to have no concept of surrender. "You are brave," the Queen said. Her voice was a rasping whisper, barely audible, transmitted through speakers that grew from the walls. "Braver than any creature I have encountered. But bravery will not save you." Santos raised her weapon. One shot left. It would not kill the Queen. The target was too large, too well protected. But she could make it hurt. "Maybe not," she said. "But I bet I can make you flinch." She fired. The plasma bolt hit the Queen in one of her many eyes. The Queen screamed, a sound that echoed through the entire hive ship, disorienting drones throughout the structure. Santos dove for cover as the Queen's guards rushed toward her. She should have died then. There were too many of them, and she had nothing left to fight with. Then the wall exploded. Sergeant Major Williams came through the breach first, his prosthetic arm literally smoking from the strain of punching through the organic material. Behind him came the rest of the assault team, 50 soldiers and a pack of war dogs, all of them firing into the Queen's guards. "Santos," Williams shouted. "Get to cover. We'll handle this." Santos did not need to be told twice. She scrambled behind a growth of hardened slime and watched as the humans went to work. The battle that followed was unlike anything that had come before. The Queen's chamber was her sanctum, defended by her personal guard elite drones, larger and faster than the regular forces. They fought with terrible skill, their movements coordinated perfectly by the Queen's direct control. But the humans had something the drones did not. Creativity. Williams led his team in unpredictable patterns, constantly changing tactics, never letting the Queen establish a rhythm. When the drones tried to surround them, the humans scattered and reformed elsewhere. When the drones concentrated their forces, the war dogs hit them from behind. Every assumption the Queen made was wrong. Every strategy she developed was countered. And through it all, they pushed closer to the Queen herself. Captain Vasquez arrived with the main force 30 minutes later. By then, the chamber was a charnel house. Hundreds of elite drones lay dead, and Williams's team had established a perimeter around the Queen herself. The massive creature was surrounded, her guards destroyed, her options exhausted. Vasquez walked through the carnage, stepping over bodies, until she stood before the Queen. She looked up at the ancient intelligence that had consumed 37 species, destroyed hundreds of worlds, killed billions of innocent beings. "It's over," she said. "Surrender your forces. Order them to stand down. If you do, we'll let you live." The Queen laughed. It was an awful sound, wet and rasping and utterly without humor. "You would offer me mercy? You, the monsters even other monsters fear? I'm offering you a choice, more than you ever offered your victims. And if I refuse?" Vasquez raised her plasma rifle. "Then I kill you. Your hive mind collapses, and your drones become mindless animals that we hunt down one by one. Either way, the swarm ends today." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Through the hive mind, she could feel her children, millions of drones across the planet and in the ships above, all connected to her, all dependent on her. If she died, they would lose their coordination, their purpose, their very identity. They would become nothing. She had never imagined it would end this way. Conquered by creatures she had dismissed as primitives. Defeated by monsters who had chosen to protect the weak instead of preying on them. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why did you come? The Veluxi are nothing to you. You owe them nothing. Why risk your lives for aliens you have never met?" Vasquez considered the question. It was a good question. The galaxy had asked it for 1,000 years, never understanding the answer. "Because they asked," she said simply. "Because they needed help and they asked for it. That's enough for us. It will always be enough." The Queen stared at her. In that moment, she understood something about humanity that no other species had ever grasped. They were not monsters because they enjoyed violence. They were not dangerous because they lacked empathy. They were monsters because they felt empathy so strongly that they would cross a galaxy and face impossible odds to protect complete strangers. They were the most dangerous kind of monster imaginable, the kind with a conscience. "I will not surrender," the Queen said. "I am the swarm. I do not submit." "I know," Vasquez said. And she pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt hit the Queen between her eyes. It burned through her ancient brain, destroying centuries of accumulated knowledge and evil. The massive body convulsed once, twice, then went still. Throughout the hive ship, throughout the planet, throughout the HFY fleet, millions of drones suddenly found themselves alone. The voice that had guided them since birth went silent. The purpose that had driven them vanished. They did not know how to exist without the Queen. They went mad. The next few hours were chaos. Leaderless drones attacked everything, including each other. Human forces moved through the hive ship, securing critical systems and eliminating any resistance. On the planet below, the remaining swarm forces scattered. Easy prey for the human ground troops. By dawn, it was finished. The HFY swarm, terror of the galaxy, conqueror of 37 species, was destroyed. The Queen was dead. Her children were either dead or captured. The threat that had hung over the galaxy for centuries had been eliminated in 4 days. 4 days. 300 humans against millions of drones. 1 week after the fall of the Queen, the Veluxi Confederacy held a ceremony to honor their saviors. It took place in the Grand Hall of Malvora, or what remained of it. The crystal towers had been shattered by the Cathfori assault, but the foundations still stood. The Veluxi had cleared the rubble and set up temporary structures, determined to hold the ceremony in the place where their civilization had begun. Ambassador Zelthrix stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by delegates from all 8 Confederacy species. Many had traveled great distances to be here. Some had come from worlds that the Swarm had been approaching, worlds that would have been next on the list of conquest. They wanted to see the humans with their own eyes. Captain Vasquez and her surviving soldiers stood in formation before the delegates. They had cleaned up as best they could, but the signs of battle were still visible. Patched armor, healing wounds, eyes that had seen too much death. They looked tired, worn, old beyond their years. They looked like heroes. "We have gathered here today," Zelthrix began, his voice amplified to fill the ruined hall, "to honor those who saved our world. 1 week ago, we were dying. Our cities burned. Our people were being devoured. We had no hope, no allies, no future. We sent a message into the darkness, asking for help from a species we have feared for 1,000 years. And they answered." He paused, looking at the human soldiers. At Vasquez, standing straight and still. At Williams, his prosthetic arm gleaming in the morning light. At Santos, barely out of her teens, who had faced a queen alone and made her flinch. The Terrans, the humans, came when no one else would. They fought against impossible odds. They died for people they had never met. And they won. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. They had all heard the stories. The numbers were almost impossible to believe. 300 soldiers against millions of drones. 1 ship against an armada. 4 days to destroy an enemy that had conquered 37 species. "We cannot repay this debt," Zelthrix continued. "There is no payment that would be enough. But we can offer our gratitude, our friendship, and our promise. The Veluxi Confederacy will never forget what the humans did here. We will never forget that when we called for help, they answered." He turned to face Vasquez directly. "Captain, the Council has asked me to offer you anything within our power to give. Territory, resources, technology, whatever you wish, name it, and it is yours." The hall fell silent. Every eye was on Vasquez. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The moment when humanity would reveal its true nature. Would they demand tribute? Claim the Veluxi as subjects? Take what they wanted by force, now that they had proven their strength? Vasquez stepped forward. She was silent for a long moment, considering her words. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the hall. "Ambassador, I appreciate the offer, but we didn't come here for payment." Zelthrix tilted his head, a Veluxi expression of confusion. "Then why? What do you want from us?" "Nothing." Vasquez smiled slightly. "We came because you asked for help. We fought because innocent people were dying. We stayed because the job wasn't finished. That's it. That's all." A ripple of disbelief passed through the delegates. No species in galactic history had ever acted this way. Every transaction had a price. Every alliance had conditions. The concept of helping strangers purely out of kindness was alien to every civilization in the known universe, except, apparently, to humans. "I don't understand," Zelthrix said slowly. "You lost soldiers. Many soldiers. You spent resources, time, effort. You risked your lives for us. How can you want nothing in return?" Vasquez considered the question. It was hard to explain, hard to put into words something that humans simply felt in their bones. But she tried anyway. Do you know why the galaxy fears us, Ambassador? Because you are dangerous. Because you are violent. Because you are, he hesitated. Monsters. Vasquez finished for him. You can say it. We know what we are. We've known for a long time. She began to walk slowly along the line of her soldiers, touching some of them on the shoulder as she passed. We evolved on a death world. Everything on Earth tries to kill everything else. We adapted. We became predators. We became dangerous. And when we reached the stars, we brought that danger with us. She stopped and turned back to face Zelfrix. The galaxy was right to be afraid of us. We've done terrible things. We've fought wars that killed billions of our own people. We've developed weapons that could destroy stars. We've proven, over and over, that we're capable of incredible violence. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. This was not the speech they had expected. But here's the thing about humans, Vasquez continued. We're not just monsters. We're monsters with a choice. We get to decide what we do with all that violence, all that aggression, all that terrifying potential. And most of the time, we choose to protect. She gestured at her soldiers. These people didn't come here to conquer you. They came here to save you. They knew they might die. They came anyway. Because somewhere, deep in our strange and violent souls, we believe that the strong should protect the weak. We believe that when someone calls for help, you answer. We believe that there are things worth dying for. Zelfrix stared at her. His compound eyes cycled through colors. Confusion, doubt, something that might have been the beginning of understanding. You're saying that you choose to be good monsters? Vasquez laughed. It was a warm sound, unlike the harsh laughter that had so unsettled the ambassador during their first conversation. I'm saying we choose to be useful monsters. The galaxy has plenty of predators who prey on the weak. What it needs is predators who protect the weak. We're trying to be those predators. But why? What benefit is there for you? None. That's the point. Vasquez walked back to stand before Zelfrix, looking up at the tall insectoid diplomat. Humans spent 1,000 years in quarantine. 1,000 years of being alone, being feared, being avoided by every other species. We've had a lot of time to think about who we are and who we want to be. And we've decided that we don't want to be the monsters everyone fears. We want to be the monsters that fear. She paused, letting that sink in. We want to be the nightmare that protects you from other nightmares. The terror that strikes at those who would harm the innocent. We want to be the galaxy's shield, not its sword. Because that's the only way anyone will ever see us as anything other than the thing they lock their doors against. The hall was absolutely silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Every being present was listening, trying to comprehend this strange and alien philosophy. Elder Morris, who had originally proposed contacting the humans, rose slowly from his seat. His ancient body trembled with the effort, but his eyes were bright and clear. Captain Vasquez, he said, his voice carrying across the hall, I have lived for over 400 years. I have studied every species in the known galaxy. I have tried to understand why humans are so different from the rest of us, so frightening and yet so fascinating. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Now, at last, I think I understand. You are not dangerous because you lack empathy. You are dangerous because you have too much of it. You feel the pain of strangers so strongly that you will cross a galaxy to stop it. You cannot ignore suffering, cannot look away from injustice, cannot accept that the strong should prey on the weak. And because you cannot accept these things, you fight. You fight with all the terrible power that evolution gave you. You fight until you win or until you die. He made a gesture that the translator rendered as profound respect. You are not monsters, Captain. You are the galaxy's conscience. And we have been fools to fear you. Vasquez bowed her head slightly. We're still dangerous, Elder. That hasn't changed. We probably always will be dangerous. But we're trying to aim that danger at the things that deserve it. Then I hope you succeed, Morris said. The galaxy needs what you are offering. More than it knows. The ceremony continued for several more hours. There were speeches and awards and rituals that Vasquez did not fully understand. But throughout it all, she saw something changing in the way the aliens looked at her soldiers. The fear was still there. Humans would always be somewhat frightening to other species. But now there was something else mixed with the fear. Hope. Afterward, as the delegates dispersed and the human soldiers prepared to return to their ship, Ambassador Zelthrix approached Vasquez one final time. Captain, may I ask you something personal? Of course. During the battle for the Hive ship, one of your soldiers, the young female who killed the heavy unit, found herself alone with the Queen. She had no ammunition, no backup, no chance of survival. But according to the recordings, she attacked anyway. She shot the Queen in the eye with her last bullet, knowing it would not kill her, knowing she would die for it. Corporal Santos, Vasquez said, nodding. She's a good soldier. But why did she do it? What possible purpose could such an act serve? She knew she was going to die either way. Why not simply accept it? Vasquez thought about the question. It was hard to explain human psychology to someone who had not grown up with it. But she tried. Ambassador, humans have a saying, I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. It means that we value certain things more than survival. Dignity, defiance, the refusal to give up. Even when giving up is the logical choice. She looked across the ruined hall, at the Veluxy workers who were beginning to clear more rubble at the first signs of rebuilding. Santos attacked the Queen because she refused to die quietly. She refused to let her last moments be ones of submission and despair. She wanted to make a statement to say, with her final act, that humans do not surrender, that we do not accept defeat, that even when everything is hopeless, we will fight. But she could have died for nothing. Yes, she probably expected to. But here's the thing she didn't. Her attack distracted the Queen, disrupted the hive mind, gave our assault team the opening they needed. Her refusal to give up changed the entire battle. Vasquez smiled. That's the thing about human stubbornness, Ambassador. It doesn't always make sense. It isn't always logical. But sometimes, just sometimes, it works miracles. Zelthrix was silent for a long moment. Then he made the gesture of profound respect that Elder Morath had used earlier. You are strange creatures, Captain. Terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. I do not think I will ever fully understand you. That's okay, Vasquez said. Most of the time, we don't understand ourselves either. They parted ways then, the diplomat returning to his duties, the soldier returning to her ship. But something had changed between them. Something that might, in time, grow into trust. Even friendship. The Persistence left Velther Prime 3 days later. Her hull was patched and her wounds were healing, but the scars of battle would remain forever. Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching the planet recede through the viewport. Behind her, the crew worked at their stations. They were tired, hurt, grieving for fallen comrades. But they were also proud. They had done something important here. Something that mattered. Captain, Lieutenant Chen said, I'm picking up communications traffic from across the sector. News about the battle is spreading. Everyone's talking about what happened here. Good or bad? Mostly good, actually. Some species are still afraid of us, but others are curious. A few have even started discussing the possibility of opening diplomatic relations with Earth. The quarantine might not last much longer. Vasquez nodded. That was something, at least. 1,000 years of isolation might finally be ending. Not because humanity had changed, They were still the same dangerous, violent, terrifying species they had always been. But because now, finally, the galaxy was starting to understand what that really meant. Sergeant Major Williams appeared at her side. His arm had been properly repaired, and he was moving with his usual energy. The battle had taken a toll on him, but he was not one to show weakness. "What are you thinking, Captain?" Vasquez watched the stars through the viewport. Out there, somewhere, another world might be burning. Another species might be calling for help. Another monster might be preying on the innocent. "I'm thinking that this isn't over," she said. "The swarm is gone, but there are other threats out there. Other predators. Other horrors. And you want to fight them all? I want to be there when people need us. That's all. That's enough." Williams nodded slowly. He understood. They all understood. Humanity had spent 1,000 years trying to figure out its place in the galaxy. Now, finally, they found it. They were the protectors, the defenders, the monsters who chose to guard the innocent instead of hunting them. It would not be easy. It would never be easy. They would fight and die in battles that no one else would take on. They would be misunderstood, feared, hated by some. They would make mistakes and suffer for them. But they would keep going. They would keep answering the calls. They would keep being the nightmare that stood between the darkness and those who could not protect themselves. Because that was what humans did. That was who they chose to be. The Persistence turned toward home, its engines blazing against the void. Behind it, a rescued world began the long process of healing. Ahead, a galaxy waited fearful, curious, slowly beginning to hope. And somewhere, in the dark spaces between stars, other monsters felt something they had never felt before. They felt afraid. Not of the human weapons, though those were terrible. Not of the human soldiers, though they fought like demons. But of the human spirit, that strange, stubborn, utterly incomprehensible force that made them refuse to give up. Refuse to surrender, refuse to accept that evil should triumph over good. The monsters the galaxy had feared were finally loose in the universe. But now, at last, everyone understood what that really meant. It meant that the innocent had guardians. It meant that the weak had champions. It meant that when the darkness came, when all hope seemed lost, when everything fell into despair, it meant that someone would answer the call. Captain Vasquez closed her eyes and let herself rest for the first time in days. The universe was vast and full of horrors. But humanity was awake now, moving through the stars, ready to face whatever came. They were monsters, yes, but they were the best kind of monsters. And the galaxy would never be the same. In the years that followed, the story of Velthor Prime became legend. It was told in 1,000 languages on 1,000,000 worlds to billions of beings who had never seen a human. The details changed with each telling. Sometimes the humans were giants, sometimes they were demons, sometimes they were gods. But the core of the story remained the same. Someone had called for help. The monsters had answered. And against all odds, against all reason, against everything the galaxy thought it knew, the monsters had chosen to save them. It was the beginning of a new age. An age where humanity walked among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. An age where the weak could hope for salvation. An age where evil looked over its shoulder and wondered if, perhaps, it should find another galaxy to terrorize. The monsters were loose, and they were watching, always ready, always human.